Today, we get real on adoption.
We wanted a young baby to get the experience of nurturing this young little soul.
And so my neighbors were very supportive. There's another lady there, she came with clothes, another one came with a basin, another one came with water. They told me, Pamela, you need to have done this a long time ago.
As I walk through this journey, my fear is that I can't be able to tell you this is where you come from.
When sweet become bitter, the child is becoming rebellious, then what is the fate of the mothers?
Accept that child with their faults and everything.
If a child is adopted, are they entitled to inherit?
Inheritance is a must.
I'm Tamima, and this is Real Talk. Adoption in Kenya has, over the last couple of years, transformed radically from the more informal type of adoption, kinship adoption, to the more formal type, which is legal adoption. Today, we get real on adoption.
An adopted child mentally is always struggling with where did I come from?
It's better it comes from you than it comes from someone else, because if it comes from maybe your neighbors or your relatives, then they lose trust in you.
Kenyan system now is forcing children to come out of this foster's home, to come out of these homes that they're used to, where they're loved, where they're provided for.
Thanks for tuning in. Now tonight, we are going to be putting adoption into perspective for you. Now, every year, we have children homes that give care to abandoned kids. We have adoption agencies that do a very, very important job. They link up prospective parents who are looking to adopt with kids who need care. Now, my guests on the show tonight have walked through this path. They have adopted children, and they'll be coming on here to share with you what is the process like. If this is something that you or your family are considering, I hope that through this show we will inspire you and push you to actually give a child who needs a home, a loving home, and to actually touch somebody's life, because adoption is beautiful. Welcome to Real Talk. I'd like to introduce my first guest, Corazon Makumbi. Corazon is an adoptive parent, so she's going to be coming on the show to share her story. What was the journey like before she finally got her bundle of joy in her arms? Please help me welcome her to the show. Welcome to Real Talk, Corazon. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And again, first of all, I have to applaud you. You are really a good Samaritan in a lot of ways, because you know that it's a very personal decision for somebody to decide to take in a child and raise it as your own child. So perhaps just walk us through, when did you realize that adoption is something that I'm seriously considering, and I'm actually going to tell my significant other that we need to do this?
Well, Tamima, thank you for having me. Our adoption journey, because it's me and my husband, began in 2013. That's when we realized, or rather, the desire for adopting came in. And that was because we had been married for some time, and we really longed to have a child, and the baby wasn't coming. So we decided, since the biological child hasn't come, we had room in our hearts and in our lives, in our home, to have a child. But we didn't start the process then. So we took back a step, prayed about it and thought about it. And I usually say, for me, the adoption journey has been a faith journey, because I had to pray and be very sure about what I was about to do. because you can't just bring in a child that is not biologically yours, doesn't have your DNA, doesn't have your blood, into your home and raise this child as though they were your biological child. So it had to take some time. So my husband told me, you hang on there, we'll let you know when we are ready. So prayed about it and researched about it. So in 2016, in November, he told me, now I think we are ready. So we began the process.
So you had to be certain.
Yes.
So there's the feeling that I want to do good, I'm thinking about it.
Yes.
But you both had to be certain, yourself and your husband, that you're willing to make a commitment to this child for life.
And then I usually say adoption is like a calling. So you have to be sure that you have had rights. You know, like when pastors say they have been called by God into ministry, it has to be sure and it has to be certain. So we had to take time and pray about it, mostly pray about it. So even during that time, we already had a name for the baby we wanted. So it was going to be a girl, and she was going to be called Tamasha. And we even have a name for the second born, which I will not tell you.
You have one already
Yes.
adopted, and you're considering now adopting a second child as well.
Yes.
So maybe just to take you back a bit, because you mentioned that you were struggling with having a baby biologically, and that's when you made up your mind. You know what? Parenting comes in different shapes and forms.
Sure.
So what was the reaction of your family? Because, you know, for a lot of African families, and especially the point that you mentioned, you had to sit down, internalize, pray about it, because it takes a lot to say, I'm committed to raising this child who I have perhaps not given birth to, but I will raise and love like I would my own. So what was your husband's family saying, your family? Did they understand your decision?
We are blessed with wonderful parents, both sides. So the first person that we got to tell was my mom, my birth mom. And she was like, if that's what you want to do, it's okay. A child is a child, either way. And then we talked to my mother-in-law, and she was also very supportive. Then now we talked to my siblings and his siblings, and they were all up to it. My cousins, you know, my friends. Yeah.
Had anyone in your circle, maybe family, gone through adoption? So that you had somebody who could mentor you through it, or maybe you saw, oh, so-and-so, it worked for them, so this should also work for me as well. Or you are the first in your entire circle to actually make the choice?
In my family, I am the first. In my circle of friends, I think I'm the first. But there's a friend of mine from way back. We're not really close, but they adopted a baby around 2012. So when I looked at the photos and I called them and they told me how the process was, so it made it easier for me and kind of made me sure thinking about it. Yes.
Okay, so I want to ask you now, once your husband and yourself, you both got on board and you're like, okay, we are doing this. So where do you start? How does it all work?
I had done my research very well. I knew that you needed to get to an agency, and I knew that there was a legal process. So when he said yes, I think I had everything set in my mind. So I just told him I know the agency. So we went to the agency, and we were told what was required, and we were given forms to fill and things to, like we had to do a medical checkup, we had to get in touch with a lawyer, we had to get certificates of good conduct. So now we went back and got everything in order.
So basically there were a lot of hoops to jump through
Yes.
for them to make sure that you're actually suitable
Yes.
to take a child into your care.
Yes.
And were you guys sure, did you have a conversation around what age the child should be, or that's something that the system dictates?
No, you can decide from what age you want a child to be. For us guys, we wanted as soon as they can be released and they are declared fit for adoption, that is 6 months. So our baby was to come home when she was 6 months. So she came home when she was 6 months and 2 weeks. Yeah, we wanted a young baby to get the experience of nurturing this young little soul.
And I have to applaud you because you've said a couple of very important things. You did your research.
Yes.
You went to a legally registered adoption agency. Because, guys, we know that we live in a society where there are a lot of social injustices. I mean, just walk through Nairobi CBD. you see the faces of the young kids, homeless, abandoned, and you would want to think that it's as easy as just taking the hand of one and going with them home and loving them. But the reality is that adoption has a very legal process to it. And I like that you're able to share with us how, as a family, you actually went through the hoops. And if I had to ask you, perhaps looking back, is there a particular reason why you preferred having a younger child between the 0 to 6 months?
I love children, and around me there were many babies, and I loved the little babies. But why we picked on having a little baby was because this baby, you're like the first contact they have with humanity. So you're able to even mold them into what God wants them to be. So that's why we preferred a little baby. We started the journey together and grow together.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what was it like raising a toddler, an infant? Because that's, you have to go through the entire 9.
So what happened in 2016, that's when we decided we are doing this. It was in November, so picked up the forms, and then we returned the forms because it was in November, so Christmas and all the celebrations, so we took the forms back in February. So by the time we were taking back the forms, we now started getting ready for the baby. We bought books about babies and about parenting, and books about food for the baby, and how to sleep train a baby, all those books. And then we went and bought clothes, nice little clothes, and then bought a bed for her, and we got the room ready for her. So by the time she was coming, she came in 2018, July. So that was like 1.5 years later. That's when she came home. And when she came home, we were ready for her. Well, because she was in a home, she was already like sleep trained. She could sleep through the night for the first few weeks. And then she realized there are people, if I cry, they will wake up and, pick me up and soothe me. So she started acting up. But it's been...
Which is great, because that means that she was adjusting.
Yes, she was. Yes, she was. Because when we left the home, the social worker told us, you see there, she's calm and all nice. She doesn't cry. When she gets home and she gets attention, then now she will be herself. And that is who she is now. It was really nice. The beautiful thing was she was already bottle feeding, and they had started weaning her. So we continued with weaning. And of course, I have this community of friends that kept on calling, did the baby eat, did you burp the baby? So yeah, I had a lot of support. And even from my parents, both sides, there was a lot of support. So for us, it wasn't hard. It was exciting when you see, or she clung, or she looked at someone, or she laughed or smiled. It was really interesting.
I want to ask you, because there are 2 types of adoption. There's open and there's closed. So did you get a chance to meet the biological mother or any of the biological parents? Are they part of the process when you're adopting?
In our case, no.
Because it was an abandoned child in this instance.
Yes.
So when you're dealing with an abandoned child, what does the law say about that? Like, what did you just solely deal with the home? Or there had to be a declaration that said that nobody has claimed this baby?
What happens in the system when they find a baby, the normal thing is take them to the police station, and then they're placed in a home. So the police do the investigations to ascertain that there is no known relative to take this child, because what we believe is a child is best brought up by family. So if there is no family showing up, that's why they wait for 6 months. They will wait for 6 months. They're still doing their investigations, and they'll do their report and say, we didn't find any family. There is no one that can take up this child. So the child is declared fit for adoption. So the police have to do their due diligence and give the report to the home. And then now the agency is the one that matches you with a home, with a child in the home.
Remember that today we are talking about adoption is beautiful. You can join the conversation via the hashtag #RealTalk with Tamima on Facebook, Twitter, and on Instagram. Well, still to come, I have experts, lawyers, counselors who will be putting adoption into perspective. In case this is something that you're interested in, we want to ensure that we give you all the relevant information so that if you do it, do it correctly, like we've had from Corazon. Her experience has been a beautiful one, and I believe that for you, and as well as a child out there who needs the care, you might actually be the good Samaritan that makes a difference. Right now, it's time to take a very quick break. We'll be right back.
An adopted child mentally is always struggling with where did I come from?
It's better it comes from you than it comes from someone else, because if it comes from maybe your neighbors or your relatives, then they lose trust in you.
Kenyan system now is forcing children to come out of this foster's home, to come out of these homes that they're used to, where they're loved, where they're provided for.
Welcome back. Remember, today we are saying that adoption is beautiful, and my guests are getting real on their journey when it comes to adopting, sharing with us what is it like, what do you have to do legally, and of course, the difference that they've made by touching a child's life. Now, right now, I want to introduce my next guest, who is Pamela Kagonya. So Pamela as well has walked through the adoption journey, and she's here with us to share with us how we can also, consider adoption. Pamela?
Hi, Tamima. I have 2 children who are adopted. The journey started in 2008, but it was after the post-election violence. I had to take in 2 children who had run away from their home due to the post-election violence.
Their home was in which area?
Their home was in Kariobangi.
Okay.
So I'm a Sunday school teacher, and when the children had nowhere to go, they had to run to their teacher. So unfortunately, the owners did not come until after 1 year. One was in Form 4 and the other one was in Class 7.
So nobody claimed them for that whole 1 year?
Nobody claimed them. They were total orphans. After those children left, I felt some emptiness, because after I knew I'm a paralegal, that I'm not supposed to live with those children if they are not my biological children.
That you had to follow the law. There is a process.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I released them. I knew where their grandmother was. I told them, I gave them transport and told them, go back to Kisumu, where you came from. But after that, I felt an emptiness in my house. Imagine staying with children for a whole year. You are calling, come, do this, do that, and all of a sudden they are not there.
Yes.
And so that is how I started thinking about adoption.
Just to clarify, at that point you didn't have any of your own biological children?
No, I didn't have any of my biological children. So after that, I went to a Catholic bishop. I thought that these Catholics who have those street children are the ones where we can adopt from. So I went somewhere in Dandora, in a Catholic church. There is a priest there who keeps children. So the priest told me, no, you cannot come. These children have their own. I'm just fostering these children. But I'll take you to a children's home where you can start your journey from.
So basically what we're saying, that it's not as easy as just walking in saying, I want that child, and walking out with them.
No, it's not easy. And when I went to the home, they also told me, you don't start from here. Go to the agency. And I was saying that, but there are so many children here, why don't you give me a child? They said, no, just go and to the agency. After you are cleared there, is now when you will think of being given a child.
So you went to an agency?
I went to an agency. The agency was very friendly. I had counseling. That is how I knew I have to tell my siblings that this is what I want to do. So I went to my sisters and my brothers. I told them. My younger brother, accepted to be a legal guardian. But the process was very easy. But now when it came to going to take the child, again I thought, how will this child be taken in the family?
How old was the child?
I had not even been shown the child. After I went through the process and I was cleared, then I just remained mom.
So unlike Corazon's case, because she was very specific,
Yes.
around the age of the child that they say they wanted to adopt. But in your case, you are open.
I was open.
Okay.
I was open, but I only in adoption in Kenya, a single person who is a lady can only adopt a girl. So there is no way I was going to adopt a boy,
baby boy.
unless under special circumstances.
Right.
And when after in 2009, I just said like that. 2010 is when I decided, let me revisit. So I went back to that home, and fortunately there was a girl, and that girl was very sick. The child was very sick. So when they saw, they told Pamela, you have been visiting us and you ran away. Let us give you a child. But this child is very sick. She's not sick of any disease. She's sick because the food we are giving here is not adjustable to her body. Just take this girl. If you don't take her, Pamela, she will die.
So she needed special care.
Yeah, special care. And I was just as like that. The caregiver told me, take this child. She's very bright, she's very good, but here we are keeping her with food which will just kill
How
her.
old was she then?
She was 7 months.
7 months. Wow.
Yes. So I just go and I take a taxi with the child, not knowing you need to buy a basin, you need to buy what, and people see me arriving with a child.
So you literally went in and
Yes.
finally you got your bundle of joy.
Yes.
And you now had to go and figure out, okay, now
Yes.
I have a 7-month-old.
Yes, what do I do? Where do I start from? And so my neighbors were very supportive. There's another lady there, she came with clothes, another one came with a basin, another one came with what? They told me, Pamela, you need to have done this a long
Right.
time ago. And my neighbors settled in me with the child very fast.
Okay.
Yes.
And I understand that you've adopted not only one, but
Yes.
2 children.
Yes. My first child I adopted is now 10 years. The other one is 13. But then I realized my first adopted child needs company. She was all alone. When other children go, she's left alone with me. So that is how I came to adopt the second child.
So was the second adoption process easier, having been through it before?
Yeah, it was much, much easier. And this one also was from the family circle. Her father died and her mother has a mental illness. So when I went to the funeral, they told me, Pamela, you are the one who adopts children. Take this child. And so my relatives gave me that other girl.
Okay.
And
So this one was more of kinship adoption.
kinship adoption,
So you didn't
yes.
necessarily go through the legal steps
No.
like with the earlier one.
No. You just go fill forms and you adopt.
But just the same way they said, at least you were, you had a big heart. You opened up your heart to 2 children.
Yes.
Can we get a round of applause for Pamela? Thank you so much, Pamela.
Welcome.
Right now, let me take some questions from my audience.
My name's Beatrice Elizabeth Akoth. When sweet become bitter, then what is the fate of the mothers? I've walked through with mothers who've adopted 2 children, 1 children. When they grow up with the interference of the neighbors who happen to be good when things are good, when things are sour, now the child is becoming rebellious, they're 12 years, one does not know. The parents die. I've gone through the government training, and there is no option where to return these children or counseling or what can one do with these children. So as VSOs, we remained at, what do we do? You took the child is yours. Mama utakufa tu na mtoto vile watu wengine wanakufanga tu na watoto, which is not good.
I think really on that, I want to invite one of our experts that we have in studio, Joyce Ngunjiri. She's a psychologist, and she's going to put that question into perspective, because basically what we are saying is sometimes adoption can be rocky, because like in any family setup, kids are unpredictable. Kids have different temperaments. So what happens when an adoptive parent gets a child? Later on in life, the child becomes rebellious. So probably, Joyce, you could put this into perspective for us.
Okay, thank you, Tamima, for the question, and thank you, guest, for asking the question. An adopted child, first and foremost, is a child like any other child who is born of a mother and a father. And a child who is adopted when they are very little or very small, they are not yet 1 year, they'll not have a problem adjusting to the life that they've been put in. It will take a while. They'll cry like her child cried immediately after she knew there was someone to pick.
Absolutely, for
them.
good reasons.
Yes,
That's
for
a
good
good
reason.
cry.
But an older child who is about 3 years old, 4 years old, they have been living in a certain way.
They've already
In the
been
home,
socialized.
They've been socialized in a
Right.
different way. So once they come to this adoptive home, it's up to the parents to make sure that this child adapts into this home. Now, there are several things you can do as a parent. First and foremost, you need to keep reassuring this child that this is their home, they are going nowhere. And at a certain age, I always advocate for 10 years. Once the child is 10 years, tell this child that
Which
they
is
were
now
adopted.
disclosure.
Disclosure. Once you disclose, as she says, there'll be those tantrums. They'll go through a phase, and they'll be throwing tantrums, and most probably they're getting to their adolescence. So storms of adolescence
Are normal.
are normal, and they'll come. And the fact at the back of the child's mind, they're adopted. So therefore, they have a baggage. An adopted child is carrying a baggage.
The fear of rejection.
The fear of rejection.
Because they were already rejected
Loss
by their
and-
biological
yes,
parents.
loss and grief. They grieve for their biological parents.
And just back to what she said, because for me, I think it's two-sided.
Yeah.
You can look at it from the child's point of view, because we have to remember, especially as a parent, you, the adult, you chose to adopt this child. Yeah. Just the same way as a biological parent, you chose to have the child. So even when they say you love through thick and thin, that is what parenting is. You don't love your child because they are good.
Exactly.
You need to even love them harder when they are going through.
Through storms.
So maybe that's what adoptive parents need to recognize. That when perhaps, yes, you raised this child and they didn't turn out to be who you wanted them to be, you cannot now discard them and throw them back into the system.
Of course you can't. Considering also your own child, your own biological child, might also go the same way. So that is a challenge to the parents, that they must bring up that child, accept that child with their faults, with their downfalls and everything. And now it's up to you as a parent. If you believe in counseling, look for counseling for this child.
And it's even more so important within the adoptive parenting. Okay.
Very, very important.
Thank you.
All right.
So right now, I want to introduce Eunice Nyambura. So she's also an adoptive parent. She has her own biological son, who is 5, and also a daughter, a toddler, who is 15 months old, that she adopted. Please help me welcome Eunice. Hello, how are you, my dear?
I'm fine, thank you.
Okay, so first of all, again, I want to applaud you
Thank you.
for making the choice to adopt.
Thank you.
So what has your journey been like so far?
So far, so good, considering it's not the first time I'm going through parenting and all. So it's beautiful, and I can say it's smooth. I have my own fears as a parent. I can say my greatest fear is that when I realized that this baby is here, and there are some stupid thoughts that you have before adoption, that you her not having the biological parents, you think it's a good thing. I've come to know that it's not so good, because she would like to know where she came from. And for sure, I'm not able. There's a dead end somewhere. And when I was doing my applications, I said that, yes, I don't want a kid who has roots where they can be traced. And so I got an abandoned kid. So I was like, it's good. She'll never find her parents. I'm the only one. And I came to realize that that's been mean. And
Yes.
now as I walk through this journey, my fear is that I can't be able to tell you this is where you come from.
So
We
as
have
an
a dead
adoptive
end.
parent, you
Yes.
believe in disclosure,
Yes, I do.
100%.
Sure, yeah.
And you feel sad that because this is something that at the moment you cannot offer to your child.
Yes.
So ideally, at what point do you think you'll tell your child that they're adopted?
Considering I have another son who is there, who sometimes I tried to just tell them that this is a tummy baby and this is a heart baby, and the boy was like, no, we all come from your tummy.
I like
and
that analogy, tummy baby
yes,
and
a
heart baby.
He don't want to hear that. He knows this is my sister.
Yeah.
So it's a journey that I'm planning to take as soon as I can. As soon as she grows 2-3 years, we start maybe visiting some other kids who don't have parents, and hoping that the journey will be as smooth as it is.
But then again, your son is young enough that he can't quite wrap his head around
Yes,
what adoption
he
is.
can. That's why he can't agree that this is a heart
Yes.
baby. Yeah.
So
he's
he
still
just
young.
knows that there's somebody else in the house that I have to share love with.
Yeah, he knows this is my sister. We
Yes.
went for holiday and we took long, and they took our sister to the children's home. So we needed to go to get the baby, because when I received that, when I got a message from the adoption, from the agency, we were not in the country. and we had to leave. So I told him we have to go home because the baby sister has been found. The baby sister is at children's home waiting for us. And he was really pushing us so that we can come and go get our baby.
So is adoption something that you always wanted to do, or it's just something like you said,
I had
a
a
heart
desire,
baby?
yes, yes, and I have a very soft spot for babies. So, and I know I can't touch all the kids' hearts, but this one I had to. And for sure, she never chose us; we chose her. So she's at home; she's good.
Have you faced any sort of negative judgment from other people for choosing to adopt?
Yes, because as you can see, I'm very tall. My son is also very tall. They say, huyu atakuwa mfupi, si warefu kaa nyinyi.
Yeah.
You see, that's not a...
Comments
yes,
like those.
yes, they are
Yes.
there. And I tell them, yeah, even short people, they are people like us. And maybe should be tall like us. Maybe.
Absolutely. I mean, she's young
Yes,
now.
and she's a baby. After all,
Can't
she's
tell.
a baby. Yes.
Okay, thank you so much, Eunice.
You're welcome.
So, I want to throw it to my audience. Does anyone have a question?
My name is Patrick Kemiti, and I have a question to the adopting parents. Most of the parents or the single mothers that adopt children, they do so because they are not able to produce children of their own. But whereas you will see in some other families that maybe couples have children and they also still want to add one. What drives them to do this kind of thing?
I think Eunice, for me, is the best person to answer that because she has a bio child and yet she chose to adopt.
Thank you so much for your question. What I can say is when you're adopting, you have to have this desire. And for sure, you have to come from somewhere. Adoption is not something you wake up and see, tomorrow I'm going to adopt. No, you have to come from somewhere. Like me, myself, personally, I love large families. Secondly, I love kids. So that's what drove me to bring an addition to my family.
Okay.
Yes.
And your husband is, because again, as a family, this has to be a joint decision.
Yes.
So did he always prescribe to the adoption vibe, or it's something that you convinced him with time?
Okay, I can say I can only talk on behalf of my family as large. They all discouraged me to an extent whereby my dad was asking me, Dad, she has a twin. You come with both of them. You know, because they would see, like me, she's a girl. I've been brought up together with boys. I don't have a sister. So for them, they took it positively because it's what you tell them.
Right.
It's what you tell them. And for sure, as you can see, most people, even guys who are here, they have that touch of a kid.
Yes.
They want to feel that this kid is taken care of. So what drives you to bringing an additional, it's you. And for sure, as one of the adoptive parents said, you have to involve God.
Absolutely.
You have to involve God. Even for sibling fights, it's something that you have really to engage God and know how you can sort out. And the moment they realize that this one was not my mom's and this one is my mom's, like that, you really know how to interact in that.
Yeah, and to navigate with that whole.
Yes, yes.
Okay, anyone else with any questions?
Hi, Tamima.
Hello.
I'm Zuhur Anjeri. Okay, my question goes to Corazon and Pamela. I was asking, has it ever reached a time in life where you sit and you are like, I have to tell these my grown-up kids where I got them from? Or will it ever reach a time when you'll want to tell them? Because someone somewhere will have to tell them something. So, is it fair to tell them? Or you just want someone else to tell them something?
Okay. Maybe let me bring back Corazon into this discussion. Is disclosure something that you have discussed as a family?
Yes, we have. When you think about it, we are human. And at some point in life, you want to understand yourself. And as I think it's Joyce who said, as they're approaching teenagehood, there's a lot that is changing in their bodies. And when they're turning into teenagers, it's a stage of self-discovery. So they want to know who they are. Why am I getting beards? You know, why are all these changes happening?
Because some things are genetic.
Exactly. And so even as that is happening to them, it is important to disclose that as much as you are here with me, you are my heart baby, as Eunice said, you are born of my heart, but there's something that you need to know, that though you are not born of my womb, you are still my child. And you have there's a background to that. You know, you are not entirely like if you have other children, like these other children. It's important because in their makeup, they would want to understand.
Right.
Yeah. And of course, people will have already spoken. And it's better it comes from you That's why she's saying she'll start earlier. It's better it comes from you than it comes from someone else, because if it comes from maybe your neighbors or your relatives, then they lose trust in you. And then considering they are moving into another phase of their lives, it's important for them to trust you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Right. Still more to come here on Real Talk. We'll be taking a very quick break. When we come back, more on Adoption is Beautiful.
An adopted child mentally is always struggling with where did I come from?
Try and invest something for the child and do it legally, put it in writing. Should anything happen to me, this and this is for my daughter.
So what happens is that before the court even gives the ruling giving you this particular child, they will require quite a lot of checks, even after the societies, the adoption agencies have gone through the process.
Welcome back to Real Talk. Thanks for staying with us today. Now, earlier on, we asked you if you have a question, feedback, or comment on tonight's topic to reach out to us. Well, we've collected some of those questions. And in my next segment, which we are calling Ask Tamima, I'm going to be engaging my two experts, Joyce Mujiri, who's a psychologist, and Virginia Kingiji, who is a lawyer and expert on legal adoption. Okay, so let's take the first question. And I think when it comes to adoption, and especially within our African culture, adoption brings up some key questions around inheritance. So I have a viewer here who is asking, if a child is adopted, are they entitled to inherit from the family?
Thank you, Tamima. Obviously, once you adopt that child, they become part and parcel of your life. They become part and parcel of your family. Therefore, inheritance is a must. They must inherit whatever you're going to leave for your children. They must be part and parcel of the inheritance. I guess the lawyer will tell us what are the legalities of inheriting.
I think, Virginia, because we had the expression tummy child and the heart child. So the heart might mean well, but we know there's also something called the law. So how can an adoptive parent protect their adopted child so that in case that parent is not here, they ensure that the interests of this child are protected?
Right. Now, there's a provision in the law where adoptive parents are told to select somebody very close to them, a sibling or a best friend, who becomes a legal guardian. So this is a person now who is appointed also in the court process. They have to go to court and they are appointed so that they are explained, it is explained to them that if anything happens to the adoptive parents, then they have to be the parents of the child, which means they're also supposed to take over the properties put aside for the child. Yeah.
Okay, I'd like to bring Pamela back into this conversation because, Pamela, you have older kids. So have you considered perhaps anything along the lines of inheritance? Have you made plans?
All along, my siblings are good to my children, so you invest in the children. Try and invest something for the child and do it legally, put it in writing. Should anything happen to me, this and this is for my daughter. Yeah.
Eunice, what about you? Because within the African context, you have a son, and that's your biological son.
Yes.
And then you have an adoptive daughter. So how do you, what are your plans as a family to handle that?
Thank you, Tamima. To me, there's no difference. They're both my kids. Immediately, like when my daughter came home, we had to try and find a way of putting her in the medical insurance, in the education plan, and all that. To me, she's part of me just the way the son is part of me.
So you'll ensure that maybe through a will or something that
Yes.
it's very clear?
Yes.
Okay.
I will do that.
So the other question here I have, and probably you can put this into perspective, because when I opened the show, I mentioned kinship adoption and then legal adoption.
Right.
So perhaps just break it down so that the common mwananchi can understand. Kuna tofauti gani? Kama ile Pamela said, her second child, that was not necessarily, yes, it's legal, but she did it from a point of its kinship. Nilipewa na yani my family. These kids had nobody to take care of them. So because I have a big heart, I took them in. But with the first child, she went through all the legal hoops.
Now, kinship, actually, you also go to court for kinship. So they've not separated, the law doesn't separate. You go to court whether you're adopting what we call a stranger or somebody from your family. So you still have to go through the adoption agencies, you still have to be approved even to adopt maybe your own sister's child. And they have to check whether the child can be freed for adoption. And then you have to go through the court process, yeah, and then get the documents. So that way you are able to enter these children into, for example, if it is your NHIF, your insurance, your visas, so they can be under you properly.
And probably Joyce and Virginia, because you know the reality is that sometimes adoption can go wrong. Which instances under the law can a child who has already been adopted be taken away from the home where they are now adopted into?
All right, okay. So what happens is that before the court even gives the ruling, giving you this particular child, they will require quite a lot of checks. Even after the societies, the adoption agencies have gone through the process, have investigated you and placed you with the child, the court will still ensure a social worker appointed by the court to come and do an investigation. Also the ministry of where the children, basically where the children are put, so be it the Ministry of Labor, East African Communities, somebody from the Children's Department will actually be sent. So they can do a report and recommend to the court that no, this child is not in a good place. The court will also look at the paperwork and say no, there is no chance this child is going to go to a university. The parents cannot afford this at this time. So the court will make a ruling and say no, we don't feel that it is in the best interest of the child. Yeah,
but and maybe Joyce, because you know there are cases where mistakes have happened. So how do both sides deal? Because here you have a child who was adopted into a home, but because of a legal technicality, they have to go back to the original family. So you have a parent with a bleeding heart. You have a child who, again, I consider this new person my mom, I've bonded with this person, but are now being taken away.
Okay, from a psychological perspective, you're actually disrupting that child's life. The only reason that can make a child be removed, especially even legally, from a home is because is in case those parents are abusive to this adopted child. So unless they're abusive, the child is supposed to remain there if they have done the legal way of adopting that child. Normally, basically, if the parents are abusive, alcoholic, yeah, they've neglected the child, and if the owners of the child are coming for the child, now I think that you have to go to court. If you had completed your legal way of adopting the child, you'll have to go to court, and if she had abandoned the child, they'll have to press charges against her. But you see, that puts a child in a very bumpy situation, a bumpy lifestyle, a bumpy family, because actually if they've already adjusted to the adoptive parents, now moving back, you're making changes which are going to disrupt the child's life. So I hope and pray that it doesn't happen often, because that can be very destructive. Most of the parents who have adopted children rarely do hear somebody has come back, unless it's from kinship.
Okay, and now that you bring that point up, probably just talking, because you know that we have some form of a social crisis right now because of poverty, because of young people having babies at very tender ages. So we've seen the horrible cases of babies being thrown. So if you had to talk to the women out there, a woman who is pregnant right now and perhaps she believes I cannot take care of this child. And you know, usually the question that they have to grapple with is it wrong for me as a mother to be pregnant and to decisively say, I will not keep this child? So if there's a woman out there who perhaps is watching this and that is their situation, is it okay for them to say, I want to give this child for adoption? And where do they start?
Actually, there's a place in Westlands where they normally take those young mothers who have become pregnant as students, and you go there and you receive counseling. From the beginning, they give you the pros and the cons of giving up the child. They give you the option of even you having the child and how they can support you or put your child somewhere and then finish school and then you can come back. But you usually given a lot of counseling so that you decide, you make a decision. So I would actually ask girls out there, if you happen to get pregnant, don't just make a decision that I'll give my neighbor a child, because that's not legal. You need to see someone to help you, go through the counseling, and deep inside you, you feel you don't want the child and you're not going to be able to take care of the child. There are very many places that can take up that child and give that child up for adoption. But remember, once you make that decision, now changing back, especially after like many years, it will be a problem. Though they are normally given a duration.
Time.
So
if you wanted to change your mind,
yeah.
in that duration, you could actually get a chance to get your baby back.
Yes, you would.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the other question that I wanted to ask, and especially now from the psychological point of view, especially when you have older kids in the home, how do you handle bonding? Because I couldn't help but notice, I think with the exception of Pamela, a lot of the kids who are being adopted are much younger, so it's easier.
Yeah.
But what if I'm taking in a 9-year-old, a 10-year-old, and I already have my other kids who are older? How do you make sure that they bond correctly?
Okay, it's very important for the parents to consider the children they have, the children that they are own biological children. So first and foremost, as parents, both the father and the children must prepare these children psychologically. Even physically, the house must be prepared for this new coming child. And the way to prepare is, first of all, give those children a talk. Let them be part and parcel of that decision. If possible, give them the option, do you want a boy, do you want a girl? Especially if you're a couple, because you can either get a boy or a girl. Give them the option, do you want a boy, do you want a baby sister, if they're of age to understand. From experience, I know of someone who actually asked the children, and the children were very excited. They looked forward to every step of the adoption. So the children are involved. Get the children to get hands-on preparation. If you're preparing a room, let them be part and parcel of it. And also keep reaffirming them that this is not a replacement. The new child is not a replacement. I'm still going to love you the same way, and we're going to love this child together, all of us. Okay. So it's very important to prepare them psychologically and let them be part and parcel. And also give the older ones roles. You're going to be in charge of this baby, doing this and so forth. But remember to share your love equally.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, now I want to bring in Beatrice Akoth. Beatrice, you spoke earlier, and you caught my attention because you mentioned that you are a voluntary child officer in Embakasi. So literally, you work in the community, and you see the worst of it when it comes to child abandonment.
Yes.
So if you had to talk to anyone who's watching this, and from a point of, if you can, give a home to a child who needs it, what do they need to know?
Thank you very much for the community people. What they need to know is taking care of a baby is not like any other easy thing. The way the lawyer has said, we are here, even the people in the community, we are VCOs, we follow up the need of this child. But when worse come to worse, the way she had said that people should look for social counseling, and in most cases, it does not even work with the people in the community. The thought is it was a rosy way, but there are thorns. With the roses come the thorns. And the government, or the policies makers, have not given us options about these thorns. So it leaves even people in the community wondering, what next? Because even the people with homes, I live next to SOS. The children are now forced to leave the foster cares when they're 18 years. An adult child in Kenya, through university, they're 24 years. What are they doing here? We are confusing children here. We do not know what to do with them. But the system, Kenyan system now is forcing children to come out of this foster's home, to come out of these homes that they're used to, where they're loved, where they're provided for, to join in their communities.
Because under the law, at 18, you're considered an adult.
An adult.
When really, in a family setting, at 18, you're still
They're
a child.
children, yes.
Because you're still being empowered to be able to stand with your own 2 feet.
No.
So I think she's made some very valid points. And probably, I think I'll throw this one to you, Joyce, because what would you say to anyone within the society when it comes to adopting older kids and maybe even fostering? Yeah.
Okay, now if you foster or adopt a child who you know where they came from, I think it's very important to make them know where they came from and find the roots and let them visit even. You are taking care of this child. Unfortunately, a lot of people who have adopted have children who they don't know where the children came from. They can't get back to their relatives. But in a case where you have a child who you know, this child came from a certain home, and these are the family members, as much as they couldn't take care of the child, it's always good to let them know that this is where you came from. Because an adopted child mentally is always struggling with where did I come from? Okay. Who are my biological parents? And so forth. So it's always good to do that. But if you got a child and the child, you don't know the background and everything, at one point in their life, they'll be searching, they'll be looking and thinking. But at one time in their life, you'll explain to them and they'll understand and they'll stop searching and they'll fit in wherever they are.
Okay, so Virginia, probably maybe you could tell us, what are some of those agencies that are accredited by law?
Yes.
Because you know also there are conmen out there, the people who tell you can buy a child from their mother who doesn't want the child anymore, which is the black market way of adopting.
Yes.
So ideally, if anyone is interested to adopt, what are some of those legal agencies that they could approach, who could walk them through the process?
All right. Now, there are about 7 accredited agencies spread around Nairobi. Some have branches in the other counties. Well, there's Bakna Kenya, that is on Thika Road. There's KKPI Adoption Society, that is in Nairobi West. There's KCH Adoption Society, that is on Langata Road. There's Little Angels Adoption Society, that is in Kindaruma Road. And my living Change Trust on Gong Road. And then there's Child Welfare Society, that is, I think, also on Langata Road. Yes.
What's the average cost of adoption from all those agencies?
Well, the agencies charge around between 12 to 15,000. The reason they charge this is to facilitate the home visit, and then they also give money back to the home, because for all this time the child has been taken care of, has undergone immunizations and all these things that happen, has been fed, clothes, so they just give back a little bit to the home, and then the rest is used to process. So it's essentially really a free service they're offering. Compared to other countries where adoptions can go up to $250,000. So this is essentially Kenya still is still in the early stages. Okay. Has stuck itself in the early stages, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, I hope that we have inspired you and that we've made you get on board the bandwagon that adoption is beautiful. Like you've heard, if you want to reach out to any of the organizations, please do, because ultimately you'll be changing a life. You'll be touching a child's life in the most sacred of ways. So I encourage you, if you can, please adopt. Well, that's it from me, Tamima. Until next time, thanks for tuning in.
Special thanks to E+ for medic and ambulance services.